Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Silver Years. My name is DK, and I'm very happy to be here, and I humbly thank you for joining me. Today, I'd like to talk about the latest Bio-Charade, and yes, that's what I'm calling it, a Bio-Charade that the mainstream media mouthpieces have been prattling on about the last couple weeks, as if we didn't see it coming. And what bio-charade am I talking about here? Because we've had more than a few lately, right? I'm talking about the latest version of the Hantavirus. And by the way, it wouldn't be the first time this particular bio-charade has been put into our collective cloud since it was tossed out once before in the early 1990s. I even casually mentioned it in my book, my Montana memoir from that time frame, Living the Big Sky Life. There's a link below if you're interested. I remember back in the 90s when this scare was initially brought out to the forefront of our attention through mainstream news as a means to create mass hysteria. Do you remember that? It was all about infected rat droppings that somehow managed to infect humans with a never before seen virus, respiratory virus no less, whose symptoms included, among other things, a purple tongue. It appears this latest Hanta hysteria mysteriously began on a cruise ship filled with tourists and apparently a lot of infected rats. And if we were paying attention, all we had to do was watch The Simpsons in 2012 to know it was coming. Did you catch that one? Many would call this predictive programming, telling us through a cartoon or movie what's going to happen before it happens, as if setting the stage for the coming event. I personally consider predictive programming to be what some would call a psyop. A psyop is a psychological operation. A psychological operation used to prepare the psyche of the masses for a coming planned event that is designed to fulfill an unsavory agenda through fear, lies, and manipulation. Some might call these events false flags. A false flag is definitely a psyop as far as I'm concerned. Now, this wouldn't be the first time The Simpsons predicted a plandemic. If you consider their 1993 predictive programming episode for the scamdemic we experienced in 2020, known as COVID 19. And I use the word plandemic here and not pandemic because every epidemic promoted by the talking heads is planned, often long in advance, many years in advance. It is a planned use of bioweapons, a planned use of our biology that has been weaponized against us, something I discussed in my previous video titled Smile for the Camera While We Gather Your Biometrics. I'll attach a link here if you're interested in watching this. These planned bioweapon tactics are used to promote and push forward an agenda that has been set forth by the ruling elites, the cabal, billionaire globalists, basically, usually for population reduction. And so they can, of course, get richer from our manufactured sicknesses and medical treatments. What doesn't kill you will make them richer as a side effect. Either way, they get what they want. They win. That to me is a scamdemic. Hence, the 2020 PSYOP was a plandemic scamdemic, in my opinion. And it seems The Simpsons wasn't the only Hollywood production preparing us for today's PSYOP through predictive programming when we look at the X-Files movie from 1998. According to the whistleblower in the movie, a phony hantavirus outbreak was used as a cover-up for an alien virus. An alien virus. Okay. There's a lot to say about that, but it's a subject for another video entirely. So, continuing. In the movie, Agent Mulder responded with the mainstream narrative that the hantavirus was a deadly virus spread by field mice in the southwestern United States. Okay. Can you say Gene Hackman and his wife in 2020 New Mexico? The informant basically said that the hantavirus was a manufactured cover-up. He called it a silent weapon in a quiet war. And for those who don't know, a 40-some-odd page document does exist called Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. You might still be able to find it online, I'm not sure. I downloaded it many years ago. Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars was a 1979 document that's been said to represent the doctrine adopted by the policy committee of the Bilderberg Group during its first known meeting in 1954. The Bilderberg Group is comprised of those secret elites running the world, the cabal billionaire globalists, who meet covertly every year to plan their upcoming psyops and false flag events or whatever other mass trauma event they deem necessary to achieve their desired control and dominance over the minds and bodies of the people of this planet, while keeping the herds thinned to manageable numbers. And folks, we are the herds, by the way. Bioweapons are a widely known tool in their arsenal. In fact, they've been using bioweapons, such as viruses, in all of its forms, longer than any of us have been alive. Can you say bubonic plague, the Spanish influenza? They are a quiet weapon used in a quiet war that the masses have no idea is being waged against them. Think Georgia Guidestones. We are the people. We are the masses. We are the targets. We are the enemy, whether we know it or not, whether we believe it or not. In fact, the more you don't believe, the better for their agenda. Crazy, huh? So crazy. It can be really hard to wrap your brain around that one. I know. It's like, really? And going new age, love and light on this isn't going to save us. Ignorance and denial isn't going to make it all go away either. It is a war. Some call it a spiritual war, a war for control of our consciousness, for control of our hearts and minds, for control over what we think and feel. However you perceive it, it is a war nonetheless. So how do we fight a war being waged against us when we didn't know such a thing could even exist? Awareness here is key. And what I'm sharing here today is intended to bring some awareness to the machinations being employed against us. Through personal re-education, something we all need to do for ourselves, we can hopefully find ways to avoid the traps and neutralize many of these harmful agendas with self-education and non-compliance. Awareness and knowledge is what will give us our power back. So let's look at some of what's been revealed and suggested out there when it comes to the current Hantavirus plandemic that the globalists are trying to get us to believe today. And please let me say that whether it's a plandemic, false flag, or other mass trauma event, people really do get hurt and people do perish. It is not my intention to discount or overlook the suffering of those harmed at ground zero of any trauma event, or any of those suffering a casualty in this silent war. For its cause and effects are very real to those touched by it, even if it was a planned setup by nefarious beings. This is more about how we choose to observe and review the logistics of the official narrative, of the story being presented to us in mass, in an analytical way so we can make the best choices and decisions for ourselves and our loved ones while proceeding with best knowledge and conscious awareness. So, what is the hantavirus? Really? Where does it come from, according to the official narrative? We are told it's a contagious respiratory virus that comes from infected rats or mice, that the virus is carried in rat droppings, urine, and saliva, and through direct contact or by breathing infected dust, the virus can be transmitted to a human. It is not, however, considered contagious between humans. In other words, no one with hantavirus is going to infect another human with it by touching, breathing, or coughing on them, or whatever other nonsense the authorities might be telling us. This means masking up with suffocation devices is completely useless. It's being widely suggested throughout the theorist communities that the truth behind the virus is in the name of the virus itself, HANTA. According to many, the word HANTA is Israeli slang for nonsense, scam, a lie, full of crap, and is commonly used to dismiss a story, excuse a situation as fake, bogus, or total garbage. Now, I cannot confirm this definition because I don't speak the language, but from what I've observed, it seems pretty spot on. Just look at the only video to be released from the quarantined Dutch cruise ship that housed the recent outbreak that started this whole plandemic scare. All of those people on that huge cruise ship, a cruise ship filled with people, and only one video got released. And it was from the same crisis actor guy who did the COVID videos during the scamdemic. Sorry, folks. Big red flag there. Big red flag. And if the virus is not contagious between humans, yet they're calling it contagious, I can only question why the cruise ship was quarantined in the first place. Another red flag to me. All this makes me wonder how these rats and mice got infected in the first place. Thousands of years we've shared the earth with rats and mice who have an important role in our ecosystem. And no virus, such as HANTA, is referenced in ancient texts or historical records. I guess that makes hantavirus a modern day virus, right? Have you noticed that all of these modern day viruses are somehow sourced and then transmitted from the animal, bird, and insect realms? We're told repeatedly that these viruses are transmitted to humans from infected animals, birds, or insects. And that's a really hard concept for me to swallow because the biology of animals, birds, and insects does not naturally crossbreed with human biology. Unless, of course, something has been manipulated and adapted in a lab to infect the human, to cross over. There's an entire list of modern day viruses we've been terrorized with. And believe it or not, they all seem to stem from some sort of non human transference. And many of these diseases are respiratory in nature. Bird flu or avian flu, clearly a bird thing. Swine flu, clearly a pig thing, even though they use pig parts when doing heart surgeries. Monkeypox, clearly a monkey thing. Ebola, apparently it's an ape thing. And by the way, the World Health Organization is trying once again today, as of today, the day I'm recording this, they're declaring Ebola a global emergency. Then there's SARS, SARS, and then there's MERS, MERS, and COVID. All three apparently are related. And apparently they all come from bats and some kind of snake venom. Then there's Lyme disease, a parasitical transmission from genetically altered and infected ticks. Then there's malaria and West Nile virus, parasitical transmission again from genetically altered and infected mosquitoes. HIV/AIDS is another ape monkey primate thing. Now, more than a dozen modern day viruses that never existed before until they miraculously did, and all in our lifetime. Imagine that. And with the COVID medical interventions that used to be called vaccines, but are really injections known to be biogenic mRNA alterations, which means in shorthand, they alter our DNA. And then with these injections come the horrific side effects few are talking about. With each COVID jibby jabby comes the list of side effects that we didn't have access to until years later because the companies making these vaccines in 2020 did not readily make the side effects known until they couldn't hide it any longer. But it's coming out that some of these modern day viruses are listed as side effects to the COVID injection, HIV/AIDS being one. It is said that Hantavirus is another. I don't have access to this scientific data, so I can't confirm or deny any side effect here. This information simply gives me pause to consider the claims further and a need to learn more. And then there's the big names and faces promoting it all. And I'm not talking the big pharma companies here, although clearly they are at the heart of every health crisis. We really need to look carefully at who is promoting what and why. The face of the COVID plandemic scamdemic was the World Health Organization, the WHO, and the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. And in front of them both is Anthony Fauci. Remember him? I understand Fauci is officially labeled doctor on the world stage, but I can only use that term when calling him Dr. Death because that is what he represents to me, right up there with Joseph Mengele. Anyhow, it looks like his presence is before us once again with this new HANTA Bio-Charade. You know, Fauci was also the face behind HIV/AIDS, the Wuhan lab in China that theoretically created COVID, and he was the face behind SARS and MERS, swine flu, Ebola, just to name a few. Given this alone, can we really trust anything he says or recommends? Fauci's public partner in crime, Billy Boy Gates from the Gates of Hell Foundation, has his face all over the cabal's genocidal agenda as well. He's no doctor. He's no scientist. He's not even smart. He's nothing more than a billionaire globalist and a known eugenicist. Yet somehow that gives him authority over our health and well-being. Yet somehow he knows best? Billy Boy has been busy as all get out, genetically modifying parasites to kill us with deadly viruses for years. He's taken ticks and mosquitoes to a new level and weaponized them against us and the animal kingdom. Literally, silent weapons for a quiet war. This information is out there for anyone with the eyes to see or the ears to hear because he's out there talking about it all the time. He's telling us what he's doing. And from what I understand, those infected with a lab created tick borne illness like Lyme's disease can become allergic to eating red meat as a side effect. How convenient for Billy Boy and his synthetic fake meat company, Beyond Meat. I think it's called Beyond Meat. Synthetic fake meat. Okay. How convenient indeed. All this while he's out there buying up our farmland while warning us through predictive programming to just wait for the next virus go around. That was 5 years ago. Looks like that next virus go round is upon us. And I would go out on a limb here and venture to say that nothing he grows, concocts, or tries to replicate will be good for us. And let me say, just as a reminder, like most of the things I discuss on my channel, this topic is extremely multi-layered and multifaceted, which means that it's not just one thing that makes it all so. It's many layers of things over time that has gotten us to where we are today. What I'm trying to shed light on here are simply some of the significant factors, the lies, inconsistencies, and duplicities that I've observed when it comes to the use of biological warfare and our collective safety, which appears to be intentionally mismanaged by the World Health Organization, the WHO, and the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. The US has recently and finally withdrawn from the WHO and its manipulations, but it appears to me that the CDC is simply a nationalized version of the WHO. How are we supposed to believe any of these corrupted authorities when we know they're not here to protect us? Their track record alone tells us everything if we have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. All said, in the end, I feel it's our responsibility to see the shadows that hide behind a veil of philanthropy and make our choices with an expanded awareness. When we use our power of choice, we withdraw from the fear frequency of the agenda, and fear tactics are no longer effective as they once were. Question everything, question it all, and then question it again, and then decide. So before I go, I'd like to leave you with a question to ponder, as I like to do. What are your perceptions of the latest Hantavirus bio event? Please leave your comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. So until next time, be well, choose love, and thank you. Thank you for listening. Goodbye for now.